A second Canadian has been detained in China on accusations of harming national security. As tension continues between the two countries, it was confirmed on Thursday that Michael Spavor, a businessman, had been detained in addition to former diplomat Michael Kovrig, candidate drew Chinese protests after it arrested an executive at telecoms giant Huawei at the request of the United States. Meng Wanzhou has been bailed, but may face extradition for fraud. She denies violating sanctions on Iran through Huawei, its business dealings. China has threatened unspecified consequences if she is not released. So high-profile is the case that as President Donald Trump said he could intervene if it helped to avoid a further decline in relations between the US and China, which are locked in a trade war. However, Mr. Trump is on officials' front on the idea, with as Assistant Attorney General John Demers remarking, "What we do at the Justice Department is law enforcement. We do not do trade." Michael Spavor is a businessman based in Dandong, near the Chinese border with North Korea. He has ties to the North Korean government and has met its leader Kim Jong-un many times. Ex-diplomat Michael Kovrig currently works for a think tank, the International Crisis Group (ICG), which has said it is concerned for his health and safety. He is being held officially on suspicion of engaging in activities that harm China's state security. However, a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman, Lu Kang, suggested another reason, saying it had not been registered as a non-governmental organization in China and therefore it was unlawful for its staff to work there. Checks by Reuters news agency did not turn up a registration for ICG on government databases for NGOs or social enterprises. Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland has said Mr. Kovrig's case was raised directly with Chinese officials. Canadian Foreign Ministry spokesman Guillaume Birup confirmed that Mr. Spavor had contacted them earlier in the week because he was being asked questions by Chinese authorities. One of his last Facebook posts on Sunday said he was about to travel to Seoul in South Korea, but he did not arrive on Monday as planned. Back in Seoul, "I will be in Seoul from Monday the 10th for a few days for new consulting work." Yeah, and a few. End of Facebook post by Michael. As with the previous arrest, Mr. Spavor is under investigation on suspicion of engaging in activities that endanger China's national security. Mr. Spavor runs an organization called Peak to Cultural Exchange, which organizes business, culture, and tourism trips to North Korea. He is a regular visitor to North Korea and regularly comments in the media on Korean issues. He is particularly well known for helping to arrange the visit by former NBA star Dennis Rodman to North Korea. In 2013, Rodman is a personal friend of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In December, Meng Wanzhou arrested in Canadian city of Vancouver at the request of the US as part of an inquiry into alleged sanctions-busting by her company Huawei. December, Canadian former diplomat Michael Kovrig arrested in Beijing on suspicion of engaging in activities that harm China's state security. 11 December, Meng Wanzhou released on bail but still faces the prospect of extradition to the US. 12 December, China confirms the detention of businessman Michael Spavor for activities that endanger China's national security. Saying the investigation began on 12 December, the former Canadian resident was detained in Vancouver, where she has family and property connections. She was granted bail of $10.6 on Tuesday but could still be extradited to the US. The US has been investigating Huawei, one of the world's largest smartphone makers, since 2016, believing that it used a subsidiary to bring us manufacturing equipment and millions of dollars in transactions to Iran in violation of sanctions. The Supreme Court of British Columbia was told Ms Meng, who was chief financial officer, had used Skycom between 2009 and 2014. She had allegedly tricked us banks into clearing transactions for Huawei which were in reality for Skycom. The banks thus became victim institutions of fraud. Ms Meng personally represented to those banks that Skycom and Huawei were separate, when in fact they were not separate, said Crown Attorney George Carsey. Skycom was Huawei. Lawyers for Ms Meng told the court Huawei had already separated itself from Skycom. Ms Meng faces up to 13 years in prison in the US if found guilty of the charges. The Canadian court heard after the detention of Mr. Kovrig. Canada said there was no explicit indication of any link to the Meng case, but China experts doubted that it was just a coincidence. By St. Jacques, Canada's former ambassador to China, told Canadian broadcaster CBC, "In China there are no coincidences. If they want to send you a message, they will send you a message." Speaking on condition of anonymity, a Western diplomat in China told Reuters news agency, "This is a political kidnapping." Asked if the detention of the two Canadians was in response to Ms Meng's arrest, China's foreign ministry spokesman described it as an operation taken by China's relevant national security authorities in accordance with the laws. Lu Kan said Ms Meng's arrest was wrong practice, adding, "I can point out that, since the Canadian government took the wrong action at the request of the US and took Meng Wanzhou into custody, many Chinese are wondering if their trips to Canada are safe." Warring parties in Yemen have agreed to a ceasefire for the port city of Hodeidah, principal lifeline for 2/3 of the country. They reached agreement at talks in Sweden brokered by the United Nations. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said he hoped this would be the starting point to bring nearly 4 years of civil war to a close. Fighting has killed thousands, while the world is worst humanitarian crisis in recent times has afflicted millions. Leaders of the delegations from the Yemeni government and the Houthi rebels, who control much of the country, shook hands after the ceasefire was agreed on Thursday. All forces from the Houthi rebels and from the Yemeni government alliance fighting them will withdraw from Hodeidah in the coming days. They will be replaced by what the army called local forces. Mr. Guterres said the ceasefire would then take place for the whole of the Hodeidah Governorate. The army would then play a leading role in monitoring the Red Sea port and would help distribute aid to civilians. He added, Thursday's agreements could be a starting point for peace and for ending the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. Mr. Guterres said a mutual understanding was announced on the nation's third city of Taiz, where there has been intense fighting. Although few details were released, there is no agreement yet on a truce for the rest of the country, including the capital Sana'a, which is controlled by the Houthis. Mr. Guterres said he hoped for a deal within a week on reopening Sana'a airport. He said a new round of talks would take place at the end of January. On other issues, the Stockholm talks were the first in 2 years between the Houthis and the Yemeni government, which has had the backing of a Saudi-led coalition since 2015. Yemen has been devastated by a conflict that escalated in early 2015. When the Houthis seized control of much of the west of the country and forced President Abdul Mansur Hadi to flee abroad, alarmed by the rise of a group they saw as an Iranian proxy, the UAE, Saudi Arabia and 7 other Arab states intervened in an attempt to restore the government. At least 6
660
civilians have been killed and
560
injured in the fighting. According to the United Nations, thousands more civilians have died from preventable causes, including malnutrition, disease and poor health. The World Health Organization warned in October that about 10 new suspected cases of cholera were now being reported every week. 2 Israeli soldiers have been shot dead by a Palestinian in the occupied West Bank, the Israeli military says, amid an upsurge of attacks in the area. 2 people were also severely injured when the gunman fired at a bus stop. A hunt for the suspect is underway. It took place near the Ofra settlement, where a separate shooting on Sunday by a Palestinian led to the death of an Israeli newborn baby boy. Dozens of Israelis have been killed in such attacks in the past 3 years.